Well, good evening, Cyclones everywhere, and welcome to the Iowa Stater Virtual Book Club event. Tonight's event will feature the book Kitchen Arabic, written by Joe Geha. My name is Matt Van Winkle with the ISU Alumni Association, and joining me this evening from the Alumni Center is my colleague, Kate Tyndall. How you doing, Kate?
I'm doing better now that the hail has stopped in Ames, Matt. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, we have a little bit of weather moving through the state of Iowa. If you're not joining us from the central Iowa area right now, so if you do see some lights flicker or some sirens, we'll let you know what's going on. We'll keep you in the loop. We are live tonight with you all, so thank you so much for being with us here tonight.
And as Matt said, a lot of you probably aren't joining us from Ames, so we'd like you to go ahead and put in the chat what city and or state you are watching from. Also, throughout tonight's event, we encourage you to type in any questions or comments you have. We know you've been reading the book, so we want to hear those from you and get those answered by Joe.
Absolutely. And at the end of the event tonight, we'll be selecting one person at random who puts any comment in the chat to receive an ISU prize pack. So you could let us know where you're watching from. You could ask a question to Joe. You can let us know how great we're doing today. Anything you want to put in the chat, we'll get to your questions later on in the program. But before we get started, we would like to say a special thank you to our sponsor of tonight's event, Dog-Eared Books. They are the official sponsor of the Iowa Stater Book Club. Dog-Eared Books is owned by two Ames natives, Iowa State alumna Ellen Grimm and Amanda Lepper. Dog-Eared Books is located on Main Street in Ames, and you can purchase books from their website to be shipped directly to your home. You can check them out on social media. They're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Search Dog-Eared Books Ames. And Amanda and Ellen actually sent us a video because they couldn't be on with us tonight. So let's take a look at that.
Hello, Cyclones. I'm Amanda Lepper.
And I'm Ellen Grimm.
We're the co-owners of Dog-Eared Books, your local independent bookstore here on Main Street in Ames.
And we're proud to partner with the Iowa State Alumni Association as a sponsor of the Iowa Stater Book Club. And we're so excited for you all to discuss Joe Geha's outstanding memoir tonight.
If you still call Iowa home, we hope you're already a friend of the store. If you live afar, be sure to visit us next time you're in Ames. But you can support us year-round by having books shipped directly to your home. If audiobooks are a jam, you can support us by using our audiobook platform at Libro FM.
Find great recommendations and everything you need to know about Dog-Eared Books online at dogearedbooksames.com or on social media at Dog-Eared Books Ames.
Go Cyclones!
Go Cyclones!
Thank you again, Amanda and Ellen at Dog-Eared Books. Matt, I just have to say, I will stop into Dog-Eared from time to time on the weekends or after work, and I just love the atmosphere of that little independent bookstore. They are always helpful. They find me books that I like to read. It's wonderful that they're a sponsor today because they're just wonderful
Absolutely.
people who love books.
I love them too because they can curate. They can give me books for my kids too. You can stop in there and say I've got young kids, and they'll find the perfect book for you. So appreciate Dog-Eared
Right.
Books for sponsoring tonight's event.
Absolutely. We also want to take a moment to thank members of the Iowa State University Alumni Association, some of whom we know are tuning in right now. Because of your membership, we are able to offer student and alumni programming like the Iowa Stater Book Club. Thank you for your commitment to Cyclones everywhere. If you're not a member of the association and value programming like this book club, please consider joining us today. Visit isualum.org/join to get started. Again, that is isualum.org/join. Now, let's get to the book.
Let's do it. I'd like to introduce the author of our book tonight, Joe Geha. He's an award-winning author, painter, and professor emeritus in creative writing at Iowa State. Excuse me. And he joins us from his home tonight in Ames. Joe, how you doing today?
I'm fine, thanks, Matt and Kate.
We are excited to have you on tonight, Joe. And what we'd like you maybe to do, if you wouldn't mind, is before we get to the Q&A, I was hoping that you could start us off with an excerpt from your book. Could you do that to get us started with the discussion?
I'd be happy to. I'll read a portion from the prologue that introduces the story that I end up telling. In September 1946, on the evening before my family was to set off on our journey of emigration to America, my 5-year-old sister, Vivi, began running a high fever. Our parents didn't dare call a doctor. Typhoid had been rampant throughout Lebanon all that summer and early fall. Just the suspicion of it would be enough to prevent us from boarding the ship. And because my father had already paid bribes to cover not only what transit documents we lacked, but also the further payoffs needed to secure us a berth on the Vulcania, the first passenger ship leaving Beirut Harbor after the war, we simply couldn't afford to postpone our departure. We would have to board tomorrow or never. To quiet Vivi's moans, my mother gave her laudanum, a tincture of opium. It wasn't hard to come by. Every pharmacie in Beirut sold it over the counter. Mama gave it to us children whenever she felt we were agitated or cranky. It quieted us and helped us to sleep. Mama made rishta soup that night for supper, and later that night, while my brother and sister and I dreamed our opium dreams, our father hatched a plan that was to become a family story. In Syrian tradition, storytellers begin with the phrase Khan Makan, a kind of Arabic once upon a time. Translated literally, Khan Makan means it happened, it didn't happen. In other words, here's a story. Maybe it happened, Khan. Then again, maybe it didn't, Makan. You decide. So here's the story as I heard it all my growing up. Early next morning, Baba, Arabic, which has no P sound, substitutes a B, roused Vivi and had Mama rouge her fever-yellowed cheeks, dress her in a bright frock, and tie a large, jaunty bow in her hair. And that's the beginning of the plan that my father had devised to get my sister aboard ship with typhoid fever. They rouged her cheeks and tickled her as they were going past the inspecting officers on the gangplank. And once the ship was sailed, my father brought her up and they took her to the ship's hospital. And that's where she spent the entire 2-3 weeks that we were traveling.
Well, I appreciate you starting with that because I think it really gets the ball rolling, excuse me, for everything we're going to talk about tonight. I actually wanted to start off with a couple of questions from Matt and I as we get other folks to get their questions into the comments. And the first one I'm going to start with, Joe, actually relates to what you just read, or a part of what you just read.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the phrase Khan Makan. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. It reminds me of growing up in a small Iowa town where all of these stories that you hear kind of take on a Khan Makan quality after a while. And everybody who's lived in small town Midwest would know what I'm talking about. So with all the rich storytelling, some of it may be true, some of it maybe not. How did you sort through the stories to share in your book?
Well, I what I did was I used the stories that I actually did hear. You know, the storytellers, they're not historians; they're storytellers. So you don't want to let some things get in the way of a good story. I don't mean to be, that you can conflate, you can stress certain aspects in telling a good story, but no, I decided on the stories in terms of how much they interested me, and how much they actually answered questions about me. You will read any story in which someone hands you a story and says, "This is all about you." You'll read it. I don't care if it's teeny print and it's no paragraphs. You'll read it if they say every word is about you. We all want to find out about ourselves, and stories are one of the ways we find out about ourselves. And the ones that I remember, the ones that I accepted, the ones that I thought I could use to help translate the experiences that I had as a child and as a family coming to America and becoming assimilated in the American mosaic. this is that's where the stories came from. I decided which ones that actually meant something to me and could be coherent to other people. We're translating ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
I definitely related to the stories. Definitely.
Thank you.
I'm a father of two, so I'm raising two young children now. So I think what they call it now is you're making core memories with your kids. Those are the ones that will stick with them the longest.
Yeah.
So I'm mindful as a parent when I'm interacting with my kids of those memories that they'll make. And a lot of the stories that you bring up in your book, Kitchen Arabic, are stories from your childhood. So it is interesting to that you can pull some of those memories. Like Kate said, maybe true, maybe not, but some of those moments really do stick with you. And a lot of them come from the people that you interacted with, those people that you grew up down the street from. I can't remember the name of the street you brought up so many times in the story.
Monroe Street.
Monroe Street, yes.
Yes, yes.
So that must have been a pivotal part in your life too, right?
It was, yes.
Yeah.
No, I raised two little daughters, and the stories they like to hear at bedtime, which I would make up for them, the ones they loved the most were the ones where I put them in the story. You know, a little girl and her sister, and that was what they loved hearing, because they want to know, who am I?
Yeah. So Joe, at the Alumni Association, we call it Cyclones Everywhere, and I just want to let you know we have people really watching from everywhere. Oklahoma City is watching. Athens, Georgia is watching. We have
my
Charlotte,
daughter's
North
in
Carolina.
Athens, Georgia.
Fantastic.
Oh, really? Oh,
yes,
awesome.
She is a curator at the museum there at the University of Georgia.
So Iowa State obviously is the one thing that kind of ties us all together, everyone watching tonight. And throughout your book, you kind of sprinkle in references to Iowa State and the time you spent here and in the Ames community. You mentioned you were a professor here for 25 years.
Yes.
So is that what brought you to Iowa, teaching at Iowa State?
I'm sorry.
Is that what brought you to Ames? As a professor?
It was the job that brought me here.
Sure.
I taught at different universities for about 10 years, and finally sold a book and got the job here, and it was a tenure track. So that was lucky for me, and in many ways, because I couldn't have landed in a better place, I think. Iowa State provided a real growing environment for me. It was a place I could raise my kids, and it was a place where I could develop my skills as a writer and as a teacher. My colleagues, Jane Smiley, Michael Martone, Steve Pett, are wonderful writers. But I met my wife there in the English department. So Iowa's been good to me. Iowa State's been good to me. Grateful for the opportunities that they gave me.
That's fantastic. That's one other thing we have in common. I met my wife at Iowa State as well. So
Is that right?
Yeah.
Obvious, a good place for meeting life partners, apparently. Cyclone sweethearts, right, Matt? That's what we always talk about here at the Alumni Association. We do want to talk a little bit about the characters in your stories, Joe, especially the reoccurring characters. We have folks who are writing in. We'll get to these questions too about these central characters, your mother, your father. And I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about your father. Your father in your book is a larger than life character. You describe him similarly to Zorba the Greek, right? Just very, very larger than life. And you acknowledge in your book too that characters like that, though they're interesting to read about in stories, they can sometimes be difficult to live with and love at times. You give explanations without giving, excuses for poor behavior. When you were working through the recipes and writing this book, how did you come to balance the showing of grace to the character while also acknowledging possible weaknesses? Was that something that you have always recognized, or did it come with time?
It came with time. And, sometimes when you're writing something out, the act of writing clarifies it for you. uh, you're able to understand some things better if you just put them down in words. And the driving force behind it, creating the character of my father, was I wanted to be fair. He was not an easy man to be with. He was very, very difficult in many ways. Uh, but I never for 1 second, even when he scared the hell out of me, I never ever doubted that he loved me. Never. Uh, it was just, it's like doubting gravity. It was there. I knew it, and I think that kind of helped me steer toward the fairest way I could present him, because no, he was not easy. In fact, sometimes he was very difficult. But he also, I think he would have laid down his life for me. So I didn't want to cheapen that. I could have made him a caricature, but I didn't want to do that. And so I tried to present it as honestly as I could, because I wanted to also be fair to my mother, who suffered a lot, certainly more than I did, at his hands. It was not an easy story to tell, but I didn't want to bring a note of heaviness either. This is my cookbook, but I did want to be straight about it, and I'm glad that that's prompted a question like yours, because that was a real issue that I had to consciously deal with in writing.
Well, it's a beautiful balance. I know Matt and I have talked about the balance of the book, the recipes, the levity, adding kind of like a leavening agent, right? Just like in our baking, it adds a little bit of everything in the book. So it's really beautifully done. I think you've done your parents very proud.
Well, thank you. That really means a lot to me. Thank you.
I think Julie asked an appropriate question we can share too now. Was your book therapeutic for you in a way as you were writing and putting this together?
Yeah, it's one of those things that once you start talking, you begin saying things you didn't realize you knew. That happens with me in my writing sometimes. I'll write something out and I'll go, I didn't know that. That's interesting. And yes, and there's a therapy in that. We excuse me, we own something when we put it in words. I think it's a way of owning it. It's a way of admitting, yeah, I don't come from perfect people. I'm not perfect people, but we all taste pretty good, so it's all right. The therapy helped.
So obviously you weave in recipes and cooking throughout this book in a way. And in the book, you write, in our culture, I'll quote you, in our culture, you are known by your relationships to others, those people to whom you're inextricably tied. So as you think about the world we're kind of in today, I guess we say the post-COVID era, where we're becoming less connected, doing things like maybe the irony of this being more virtual like this, but we are able to reach so many different people through this way.
Right.
But how do we continue to build communities and stronger ties, with family, friends, and maybe strangers as well?
It sounds, the phone is a communicating device, but my first impulse when you ask that question is to say, put down your phones. I think this, it separates us, also get you hit in traffic, but I think I consider myself a very successful retired guy. I do a lot of retired guy things. I have a lot of hobbies, but one of the most important things I did, and something I think that the pandemic taught me, I have a Wednesday morning coffee group. I have a Friday afternoon beer group. I have a once a month poker group, and I also join in poker tournaments. For some reason, I think you need to see people across the table from you. I can play poker online if I want. It's not the same kind of thing. And yeah, I think that there's something about the regularity all the way through COVID. My Wednesday coffee group, we met in a park, sitting on lawn chairs that we brought, and drinking hot coffee because it was mostly wintertime, and bundling up. But there was that need to see people. And I think that's one of the ways to build connections is through human contact.
Now, Matt, I'm seeing here, if it's okay, I'm going to jump in with a question that I think
Yeah, go for it.
kind of fits in here. We've got a question from Shauna here. She says, or yeah, they say, I loved how you showed how food connects us to each other, our community, but also fosters memories to come up during meals and eating. Does the rest of your family connect food and memories the same way?
I would say yes. Certain dishes mean things to us, and we'll eat. I'll say, for instance, well, I talked to my brother or my sister. I'll say, well, we made lukigi last night. Oh man, lukigi! Last time we had that, blah blah blah. And go on. Those were, it's something we have in common that we had in common with our parents, and more or less we pass on to our children, I suppose. But talk about coming together. There's nothing like eating together. Sitting at a table. That's the original unifier, I think. We eat together. We break bread together. We eat the same food and we talk about it. The rest of my family connects certainly with food, they grew up with the same recipes that I did, and not only my immediate family, my large extended family back in Toledo, Ohio, where I grew up. There's a large Arab American community there, and we have that in common. In fact, that's one of the things that most immigrants hold on to. They lose the language that they came over with, but the music and the food, sometimes the dancing, that for some reason stays, and the recipes don't change. In fact, they're nothing people want you to improve on. People will say, well, I made tabbouleh with couscous instead of using bohol. And people like say, what'd you do that for? Or they say, I made a raw kibbe that's meatless. And they go, oh, pew. You don't do it like that. It's a very conservative, almost reactionary attitude toward the food. It's got to be the way grandma or Siti made it.
Amen. Amen. I
Yeah.
say that all the time. I'm like, I want it the way I want the potato salad the way mom made it, right?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I can totally relate to that.
Memory comes through smell and taste. It goes through a part of our brain that actually uses, that actually registers smell and taste, that has memory. So when they think that may be what, I'm losing words here, when you have deja vu, they think that is because it passes through that part of your brain that feels like memory. It's not a memory, but it feels like it. So anyway, I took a little side tour into something I don't really know a lot about.
No, that's okay. That's what book club is about, exploring things. And we do want to explore just a little bit because you've brought it up several times, the immigrant experience.
Yeah.
So you have this line in your epilogue. So we're jumping from the front of the book all the way to the back of the book that says, we came to America to become Americans and we exceeded. I really do like this line, the immigrant story, and I'm going to make a bad pun here, guys, but the immigrant story is baked into your book. However, the experience also includes othering, times when you were made to feel different than those around you, and the struggles of being a newcomer in the United States, in our country. How do we as Americans continue to work on both celebrating our differences while also recognizing our strength as one nation and welcoming that person who, is different than myself?
It's not easy. I think you start with empathy, and I think this is something that good readers do too. I used to tell my students, you need to approach the characters with empathy, which means you take yourself out of yourself for a minute and put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Some people can't do that, or really fight doing that, because they're afraid to let go of themselves, I think, for a little bit. But I think that's what you need to do. You need to let go of yourself and see the other person. Yeah, we're different, but we're also not that different. There's similarities. We have the same kind of loves and fears that other people have. And that would be how I would think. How do you do that? I think you do that by reading. You do that by just mindfully opening yourself up to other people. Some people don't do it naturally. I'm not. I'm sort of shy. I'm not outgoing. People talk about my face and repose, and what are you mad about? It's just the way I am. It's just the face, But anyway, that's I think that it is a sense of needing to open yourself up to other people and to really be a little courageous and take that chance.
That's really a nice answer. I know I was sharing with Matt earlier. Earlier this year, I was privileged to get to go on a travel trip with some of our traveling cyclones to Egypt and to Jordan.
Mhm.
And Joe, when you say, we really have a lot in common. We were halfway around the world, and we had so much in common that we didn't recognize until we were in another culture experiencing new things. But really, our humanity carried through. And just like you said, I think reading does that. I think travel does that. But you have to be willing and open to experience.
Yeah, I think the fear of not of other people causes us to exaggerate the differences between us. I think a lot of that is founded in fear. Because you scare me, you're really different. It takes courage.
Yeah,
It takes
it
some
really
courage.
does. It really does.
So, Joe, our my next question actually is going to be asked by a commenter because it's a very similar question, but he has a little pre-statement here. He says, this is from Jim. He says, Professor Geha,
No.
I had an
No.
English class from you about 40 years ago. One thing hasn't changed over the years. I've come to class ill-prepared. I haven't finished the assigned reading.
We appreciate your honesty, Jim. You still have time. It's a good book.
No
That's
points.
That's too funny. But he does have a follow-up question. He wants to know if you had a favorite recipe from the book, one that you kind of enjoy making the most, maybe.
Well, the one that I have, let's put it this way, the one that I think translates best, which means, I did cooking demos at a Cook's Emporium store here in Ames for 25 years. About twice or three times a year, I would demo a recipe. That's where all these recipes really were tried and true. And the one that people kept asking back for me to redo again was mjaddara. Mjaddara is lentil and rice pottage, and it's got an interesting history. People believe that it was the dish of lentils that Jacob offered to Esau in return for his birthright. So it's called, Jacob's mess of pottage, and it is flavored simply by onions. You can add a few other little cinnamon or something if you want, but primarily the flavor comes from the deeply cooked onions, and they caramelize, and the dish is totally transformed. And you eat it with something. You eat it lukewarm with something cold like a salad, or pickled turnips, which I have a recipe for in the book as well. And it doesn't sound like much, but it'll knock your socks off. I ate it every Friday because we were Catholic, Melkite Catholic Arabs. So we had, Lent and Fridays. We couldn't. Every Friday we had mjaddara, and it was it's a perfect protein. That is, it's got rice and the lentils together, and it can substitute for meat. But a lot of these recipes I was so sick of growing up. Mjaddara again. Now I'll tell you, it just, I love it. I love it. I love making it. I love opening the fridge and seeing I've got some left. That's the recipe that I would say. I think it was left over and cold. Yes.
That's what Frank says in the comments.
Absolutely.
And Julie wants to know if that's the same as the lentil pottage on 47 on the book.
I believe it is, but let me look at 47 here.
I was going to say, guys, this is the part of the book club that I was worried about. My mouth is watering now. I'm hungry. Thank you a lot.
Yeah.
I was thinking we should have Joe prepare a dish for us.
And you get a bonus if you can pronounce mjaddara.
It looks like Julie is right. Yes, it's page 47. And
Yes.
There you go, Jim. If it was good enough for Esau to sell away his birthright, it'll be good enough for everybody else
That's
on
right.
our talk today, I'm sure.
So Joe, spell that for us, for those of us that
Well,
don't know.
you start with an M, but before you finish making the M, you go right to a J, but leave the J away and go right to a D sound, and you're mjaddara.
Okay.
Mjaddara.
Yeah.
We'll have to practice, Matt.
That's it. Yeah.
Does it come out looking something like this?
Picture. There it is. Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
Good.
Yeah, and you see they got the
search
salad right in there with it, and I love to stir it all in together. It's delicious. You can eat it hot, but there's a tradition that says if you eat an olive oil-based dish hot, it makes you dizzy. So you should just wait until it cools off.
Hey, Joe, I'm curious if there's somebody that's maybe a novice cook, somebody that's looking to get into maybe one of the recipes in your book. Is there something that it's an easy one for people to get started with that you recommend?
Actually, mjaddara is, but there's a great dessert that's very easy to make called mahalabiye, and it is sort of similar to a panna cotta, if you know what that is. It's a creamy confection, and it's flavored with rose water or orange blossom water, and it's delicate and yet very, very creamy. I think, and so easy to make. I mean, it practically makes itself. The directions are simple, and yeah, that would be it. And if you can pronounce mahalabi, what it means in Arabic is milky stuff.
Love the direct translation there.
Yeah.
Kate, do you have any other questions before we get into some of our questions from our listeners and our viewers?
I think that we've talked through a lot of our questions. So now I want to hear from our viewers. What all did we have? I know we've gone through some of them. I'm seeing a couple more questions that we maybe didn't hit on. Matt, I'll go ahead
Yeah,
and, if it's
sure.
all right with you, I'll go ahead and we've got one from our ISU Alumni Association endowed president and CEO, Jeff Johnson. This goes back a little bit to our discussion of parents. Jeff says, I loved your description of we all first learn from our mother's voice. Would you say more about that, Joe?
Well, yeah, the mother's voice, you hear it before you're even born. You're listening to it for 9 months. It's that connection you have with the world that wants you to come out and join. And I learned my mother's Arabic. There's my mother was from Damascus, and in Damascus the pronunciation is a little different than in Zahli, Lebanon, where my father was from. For example, in Damascus you would say A for yes, and in Zahli you'd say Aywa for yes. You see the difference between the mountain and the city, but the accent that I grew up with was my mother's, because that was the one I was told stories in. It's the one that read prayers to me at night before I fell asleep, it was. I think that's one of the universal experiences that I do touch on in the book, in that we learn that voice first, and it teaches us the world. And I connect that in a way with food, because we get our first food from our mother as well.
Very nice. We had some other questions on the subject of food, and Sharon wants to know if you continue to eat a lot of lamb. A lot of the dishes, Kate and I were talking earlier, a lot of lamb dishes in there. I love lamb. Is this still something that you continue to make at home?
Yes, in fact, I was lucky enough to be called by a friend of mine just recently, who said they've just slaughtered a lamb. Come on over. So and so is a really experienced butcher, and he'll show us how to do it. Bring your knives. So we spent the morning carving up a side of lamb. It was very interesting and a lot of fun, actually, and it was delicious.
Yeah,
it was really we can get, if you can get good local lamb, but you can also buy decent lamb, that's from Hy-Vee, from Costco or Sam's Club. Their lamb is plenty. People say, where do you get good lamb? I don't know. Where do you get bad lamb? I don't know.
I'll give a little plug to the Ames Meat Lab on campus there. They have, I think they sell meat every Friday? They open up for a short period of time, and my uncle prepares a great rack of lamb, and he gets it from the Ames Meat Lab. So
love
the good
rack
stuff
of
there.
lamb. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. What's interesting about a lot of our lamb dishes is that they're often made with cinnamon and allspice, flavored with cinnamon. And people say cinnamon on meat, but it's good. It works. You try it out.
Yeah, definitely. I know that Matt and I were both saying we have our homework to do, working through the various recipes in this book one by one.
Yeah.
So Alan was in the chat. A quick comment before we get to a question from Alan. My uncle is Lebanese. I'm so glad I grew up learning about his culture and, of course, the food. I make many of his recipes and look forward to trying yours out.
Yeah.
Alan
Well,
go ahead, Joe.
No, it changes with every family. If you eat with a different family, you'll know that it's different. It's not mom's, but mom's is the one we want to get.
Alan also asks that it also says that his daughter loves okra stew. Yes. His uncle's recipe used pomegranate molasses. Do you use that? Okay.
Absolutely. Yes. And lemon. I like it a little tangy. So the pomegranate molasses is already a little tangy, but you'll add lemon to it too, and it's very good. I love bami. It's called bami. It's delicious.
Joe, do you have any plans to do any more of these cooking tutorials at Cook's Emporium in Ames or any other local places?
No, that kind of died out with the pandemic. That's when I stopped doing them, and so and now that I have stopped doing them, I realize what a job it is. So no, I've done enough of that, I feel.
I am a little curious though, when you were giving those classes, Joe, did you ever get certain questions over and over, or what was, what would people say over and over that just either surprised you or a good question that they would ask?
Well, one of the things was that they were, you see, I started telling family stories to them. These were a group of maybe, there would be as many as maybe 30 people at one of these demos, but there was a core of about 10 or 12 who would be regulars, and they'd be sure to make it if I was giving a demo. And I remember when I first started doing that, I would, I'd be frying up the onions, and I'd show them how I chop them, and I'd put the olive oil, and we'd get them going. And then you got to wait for the onions to brown. And while you're standing there waiting, you got 30 people just looking at you. I tried telling jokes for a while, but I don't have that many jokes. And so I'd say, well, did I ever tell you that my father was a bigamist? And they go, what? And they wanted to hear the story. And I would tell them a family story. And so I'd tell family stories while I was waiting for the onions to brown, whatever it was. And eventually it was because of them. I mean, they said, you got to write a cookbook. Okay, and leave and put those stories in. You got to put the family story. And that was where it originally started. After I'd been doing it about 15 years, 20 years into doing it, they were saying, you've got to write these down. We want to read these stories. And so most of these stories, I tried to bring them into a kind of a narrative in the book, a connected narrative. But that's how it started.
Gotcha.
Through
Well,
those
I can certainly see how that would get people's attentions while you're waiting for your onions
well, I
to
knew
brown.
that. I mean, that was kind of tricky of me, but you want to keep their attention. So
You had some good training from being a faculty member as well, I'm sure.
yeah, that's true.
Looks like as we were talking about it, Jinwa knew the pronunciation or the spelling of Jedra, right?
Mjandra, yes.
Jedra. Julie, I think commented on the same recipe as that. She said, "I skipped over that one because of the rose water. Any sources for finding these ingredients when we aren't near specialty stores? Any substitutes or things you'll allow in your recipes?"
Yeah, definitely. If it calls for rose water and you don't have it, leave it out.
Okay.
That's
Easy as
primary. Yeah, you may be surprised. You might try something else. But that being said, you can also get any ingredient on Amazon.com, and you'll have it in a couple of days. Any ingredient you need, they have them. But here in Ames, we have the Pamel Grocery, which has been a real I had people coming up from Kansas City to visit, and I'd take them to the Pamel Grocery, which is an international grocery store, and they'd say, "You're so lucky you have this," what a wonderful thing. And yeah, we were. I've known Ahmed now for about 25, 30 years, and I go in there, and it's a little taste of home there too. The smells remind me of my dad's grocery, but we're just lucky to have that here in Ames. But if now with the internet, anything is available.
Great.
I know that as I was reading through your book, there were little tidbits that I even used when I was going to the grocery store. So, like, I was making some of your eggplant stews.
Hmm.
And I know that there are several greengrocers have told me that this is an old wives' tale, but the trick to finding really good eggplants, I have found that your father was absolutely right in some of the things that he told you. So as I was looking through this, folks, as you're reading this book, take some of those little notes into account because they can really steer you correct, at least in the recipe that I was trying with eggplant in it. So
Yeah, you're talking about sexing the eggplant, right?
being able to tell male versus female, and I do
Right.
notice a difference as I'm
Yeah.
cooking the sometimes we substitute things in recipes, but there's also really something to getting really good ingredients or
That's
fresh or local ingredients or the best ingredients as your
yeah,
father would have
yeah,
said, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Especially when I can't go to a grocery store and have your father pick out everything for me one by one. I have to do it
Yeah.
myself.
Well, the locally grown lamb is the best example I could give. I mean, I never tasted lamb so good, and the person that we were at his place and we were cutting the meat, uh, cooked one of the chops while we were just have a taste and see what it was like. My God, I never had such good lamb in my life.
Yes.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. That's you start with good ingredients, and you don't crowd them. You can't lose. You can't go wrong.
And I would encourage people who are tuning in right now, if you've tried any of these recipes or you flagged any of them in your book, like I have with mine, send those in the chat too. We'd love to hear what recipes you've tried. Now, Matt, I
Yeah.
think I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
No, nothing really. I was just, yeah, absolutely. Keep commenting in the chat. We want to let people know too, before we end the show, we're going to do one prize. We're going to draw for a prize winner. So make sure you get your comments in the chat there if you haven't already. So one last chance before we do that. But Joe, it was such a pleasure to talk to you tonight, to talk to you about your book. I know, like we said, you can get this book at Dog Eared Books if people hadn't picked up a copy, if they hadn't read it along with us. But is there anywhere else that people can find this book? Do you have a website or anything else that people can check out your work?
It's available on Amazon.com, of
Okay.
course, and BarnesandNoble.com, and through many local bookstores. And if the bookstore isn't carrying it, you can ask for it, and they'll get it for you.
Yeah.
It should not be too difficult to get a copy that way.
Well, and as we mentioned, Dog Eared Books will ship the book to you. I know a lot of folks did that we
Yeah, I
know.
didn't
So
know that either. That's
yeah,
great to know.
yeah, absolutely. There's their website on the screen if you want to get a chance to check Dog Eared Books out. Joe, thank you so much again. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this tonight and speaking to Cyclones everywhere tonight.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Kate. This has been quite an experience. I sure appreciate the Iowa Alumni Association choosing my book too. That really touches me. Thank you.
We appreciate you. And we also want to thank you all for joining us, being with us in the chat. And we'll be announcing our 6th book in our book club series in the summer issue of Iowa Stater, which will be sent to Alumni Association members in July, coming up just a couple months. And then it'll be emailed out to all alumni and friends shortly after that. But Kate, do you want to kind of queue up our prize for tonight?
Yep, drum roll, please. Right. So before we sign off, we're going to select one person who commented in the chat tonight to receive an ISU prize. Here, the round and round we go. Where she stops, there we go. Adam, congratulations. You have won.
Congrats, Adam. We will be in touch with you about receiving your prize from the Alumni Association very shortly. Appreciate you.
Yep. Congratulations, Adam. And as we sign off tonight, we want to remind you of the value of belonging to your alumni association as an annual or a life member. Programming like this book club is made possible by member support, by you members who are out there right now. We can't do what we do without our members. So you're going to see that isualum.org/join. Please visit that tonight. And if you enjoyed tonight's discussion and feel compelled to keep the connection between Cyclone alumni and friends strong, join us. Visit isualum.org/join. We look forward to seeing you at our next book club. Have a great night, folks.
Thanks, everyone, for watching. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.